Good evening, everyone. Wow, this is a good microphone. I don't have to shout for once. Lucky you. Welcome to another Beauty Triangle event. Really nice to see so many new faces, so many familiar faces, and welcome to 180 Health Club, which everyone has come in and has said, what a beautiful venue. So thank you, 180, for hosting us. It's really incredible. I'm transfixed by this screen behind me constantly. For anyone who I've not met, I'm Francesca Ogyeman-White, and I'm the founder of the Beauty Triangle. So we are here tonight to discover how to find equilibrium, because our world is moving faster and faster, and even after the lull of lockdown, I think many of us are really struggling with this frenetic pace that we have found ourselves thrown back into. So many of you who are not new to our talks will know that when we set up the Beauty Triangle, it was with the idea to educate and also empower all of our audiences on their health and well-being, and always from a holistic standpoint, which is why you will always find a very diverse trio of speakers. But speaking of speakers, it was also designed to introduce you to these ladies, and basically the most expert people in the world of wellness, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, so it's important we get our information from credible sources. So, starting tonight, we have Dr. Tiina Meder, amazing dermatologist with over 25 years of skincare experience, I believe. Quite impressive.
Yeah, I started in '96, so...
That's impressive. We also are joined by Rhian Stephenson, who is a nutritionist and naturopathic coach, and finally by 180's own brilliant acupuncturist, Joanna Ellner. And they are all here to really help us get things back into balance, whether it's skin, sleep, hormones, really help us foster a stronger constitution and a sense of resilience as we get back out there into the real world. Just a few things before we start. You should have found a program and a referral card on your seats. If you look very closely, you'll notice that Ms. Jean-Kilchantre, who was one of our speakers tonight, sadly COVID-related can't be here, but we've been very fortunate to have Tiina drop in for us, so immensely grateful to her. If you'd like us to connect you with anyone that you hear speak tonight, then just tick the box next to their name, and we will connect you afterwards. What else? We'll have a Q&A towards the end, so any questions, just save up for us then. And a goodie bag for you to take away. So, yeah, don't go leaving without that. I'm going to hand over now to our speakers. They're going to say a quick hello and introduce themselves, and then we will get started with the main conversation. So, Tiina, over to you. Just a quick hello and who you are.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you. Oh, my God, it is good microphone. Yeah, like a rock concert. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I didn't have a time to prepare properly, but hopefully I can answer the questions. I'm a dermatologist, and I started to work as a medical doctor many years ago, and I specialize in the cosmetic safety and research and development of the topical skincare. That's how we met with Francesca. And now I am running the skincare brand, Meder Beauty. Coincidence, the same name as my family name. And I'm very passionate about the holistic concept of the beauty, because the skin, it's not only the skin, it's the biggest organ in our body, closely linked to all other organs and tissue.
Thank you, Tiina. And Rhian, maybe we share our microphone.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Rhian Stephenson. I am a nutritionist and naturopath. I'm originally from Canada. When I moved to London, I was in clinical practice for about 10 years, and then I moved over to Cycle, which was a boutique fitness brand. I've recently come out of Cycle and gone back to my roots, and we started a supplement brand called ARTAH, and we do functional supplements and targeted nutrition. So I have a huge passion for women's health, for energy management, for gut health, for kind of all those key lifestyle things that can be really, really affected in a positive way through nutrition and supplementation. So I'm really excited to speak about that this evening.
Thanks, Rhian. And Joanna.
Hi, everyone. My name's Joanna Ellner. As Francesca said, I am an acupuncturist practicing here at 180 Studios, which is brilliant, every Monday. My background is actually quite similar to Francesca's in that I'm a former beauty journalist, beauty director. I spent 15 years writing about skincare, health and wellness, and consulting to brands. So that's very much something that I bring into the treatments and my day-to-day work as a practitioner. And actually, Francesca and I worked together many, many moons ago.
It's funny how it comes full circle.
Yeah. So it's so nice to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for being here. And we've got the wonderful Hazel, who runs everything that happens here at 180, just to do a little introduction as well. Thank you for having us, Hazel.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for coming to 180 Health Club. We really loved seeing everyone here. Just to give you a little background to 180 Health Club, we're brand new. We launched just 2 months ago, and what 180 Health Club is a different experience to a normal health club. We are a members-only space, currently by invitation only to 180 members, and then we're also open to Soho House members who can book and access all the treatments that we have here. As a health club, we're a platform for brands and freelancers to showcase their talent. So we curate what we believe are the best of the best in their different areas of expertise, people who specialize in one area, whether that's yoga, whether that's acupuncture, whether that's massage. So you don't find someone here who's delivering nails 1 second and a massage another. They're specialists in what they do, and we work with them in a very much a partnership model. So that's what we are. Welcome, and please do enjoy the day.
Thank you so much, Hazel. And I love the whole concept of 180. It's very futuristic, and I think it appeals to our very sort of frantic modern lifestyles, having everything under one roof, which I think is what we're going to talk about tonight. So starting with Dr. Tiina, firstly. Tiina introduced herself. She's obviously a dermatologist, many, many years of experience in the industry. So maybe we can start by thinking about, what recent years have done to us and our skin. We've had the turbulence of lockdowns, we've had the microanalysis on Zoom, the collective stress of all returning to normal life. I mean, what do you think we're all feeling about our skin nowadays?
Yeah, the last 2 years, that was such a challenge for many of us and probably for all of us. And as skin is very close to the nervous system, obviously the skin reflects everything what's happening all around us. And actually in our embryo life, the skin and the nervous system, they are the same. So for the first few weeks of the embryo development, the skin and nervous system called ectoderm, that's like a leaf covering the embryo, and after it's starting to develop, and one part of the leaf is going inside, like a tree, forming the nervous system, and another part of the leaf is covering the body. And we call it the skin after. But actually, it is literally the same organ. And like one of my very favorite dermatologists, Professor Misery from Lyon University in France, he tells once, and skin and nervous system, they are siblings missing each other and exchanging emails constantly. So obviously, when we are going through the pandemic and lockdowns and everything in our turbulent world, our nervous system is just emailing constantly to the skin. Hello, what happens? React. And our skin is reacting. And for some of us, our skin is reacting a little bit overreacting by the redness, by the inflammation, by the development of some unwanted changes. Some of the people, they are more, they have the strongest type of the nervous system. So the nervous system, it's not emailing constantly, that's a little bit more often, so skin reacts better. But anyway, we need some special support in this time, and it's not only the local support what you can apply on the skin, but also a lot of things from the nutrition, lifestyle, and skin will benefit of any. So, long story short, that's no better time for the lifestyle improvement and the nutrition improvement than the time of the global stress.
Yeah, you're so right. It's something that is so applicable to all of us. What are the most common skin complaints that you've seen patients manifest with since, pandemic and in recent years then?
And it is a really good question, because we, on our website, we started to notice the increase of demand about sensitive skin since the March of 2020, when pandemic just started. And after, in a half of the year, we've seen like pandemic of the skin sensitivity. We never answered so many questions about the sensitivity of the skin. And after, I noticed more and more patients with an acne and rosacea and different kind of atopic skin conditions. So literally everything what could manifested. And the information, it is some kind of, typical reaction. You can react by information to many stimuli. What happened with a lot of people, and especially with women who are prone to acne, who suffered from acne or skin redness or skin sensitivity in some step of their life, now it's recidiving. So I think now that's a great safe choice of skincare products. They are products for the sensitive skin.
It's interesting that so many of us are becoming susceptible to this skin sensitivity, and perhaps it's not something that's ever sort of been an issue for us in the past. I mean, why is the sensitivity? So is it to do with the nervous system and that link then?
Yeah, absolutely, because skin sensitivity, it is a mostly reaction by nervous system and not the reaction of the skin. Even some recent research shows that different part of our brain is reacting to the skin stimuli for people with sensitive skin and for people with resistant skin. When just scientists, they applied the lactic acid on the skin of the hand, for people who didn't get any sensitivity of the skin, reacted the right hemisphere of the brain. And for people with sensitive skin, acne and rosacea, it was left side.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
So it's going by different pathways.
And what do you do when somebody is presenting with sensitized skin then? Are you looking at topical ingredients to manage that? Are you looking at lifestyle?
As I am a dermatologist, so my responsibility is mostly the skincare. And obviously I am recommending some lifestyle choice, but I prefer to recommend lifestyle specialists and nutritionists to help better. But obviously it's easy to say, sleep better. And it's so difficult to manage to sleep better. So I am recommending to use specific skincare products, which helps to calm down the skin with products enriched with prebiotics, probiotics, anti-inflammatory ingredients restoring the skin barrier. But
the skin barrier is so important, particularly as we're sort of fluctuating in seasons.
Restore the skin barrier as much as you can. And as I'm a big fan of the Human Microbiome Project, I think we should outsource this work to our microbiome, because microbiome does it better than us.
Are you talking about the skin microbiome?
Skin, and that's very difficult to separate the skin microbiome from the gut microbiome, because it's well-proven access gut to the skin, so it's always better.
Yeah, the conversations we have now about skin always trip into talking about gut and gut health, and I'm sure Rhian will have lots to say on this later as well, but you mentioned prebiotics and probiotics. Why are they so integral to the skin when it's sensitive?
Actually, the prebiotics, they are substances which helps to promote the growth of beneficial bacteria and other microorganisms on our skin or in guts. And the probiotics, they are microorganisms themselves. And logically, it seems to be a logical choice to start with the probiotics, because eat healthy bacteria. They will help you. Apply healthy bacteria on your skin. They will do the work. The problem is that they are fragile. And it's in the alimentary complement that's a little bit easier to keep them alive. And in the skincare, it's very difficult to do because of the texture of the substances. Microorganisms doesn't live in the oil. And in the water-based product, it's difficult to keep them fresh. So in the skincare, we are working mostly with the prebiotics, which are simple molecules able to feed beneficial microflora and suppress the growth of pathogenic microflora. It works extremely well for the acne treatment, rosacea treatment, and also for the sensitivity, because when you promote the growth of beneficial microflora able to restore the skin barrier, that the work is done. The skin is moisturized, calm, happy, looks
And it feels
better.
like as soon as you get that skin barrier restored, a lot of these changes, these positive changes, do naturally follow almost as a side effect of having just equalized the skin barrier.
Yeah, absolutely, because the skin barrier and the microbiome finds equilibrium in the skin much better than we can do it by ourselves, because it's very difficult to diagnose what kind of deficiency you personally can have in the skin barrier. And the microbiome on our skin, it's like our personal laboratory, which is developing and producing substances you need for you personally. It can develop natural antibiotics to protect you from the infection in 20-25 minutes, better than any pharmaceutical factory. It can help to produce hyaluronic acid to moisturize the skin. But it should be balanced. It's like children's skin. You see, kids' skin, it's so perfect. Yeah, and so we are trying to restore the microbiome and go a little bit back.
And I suppose everyone's microbiome is bespoke to them as well. So there is a little bit of probably trial and error in figuring out how best to restore that. I mean, you said it was, it's obviously very applicable to breakouts and acne. And sort of what else are you doing apart from the pre and the probiotics to manage breakouts? Because that's certainly something I think, you know, it can be hormonally driven, it can be stress driven, it can be diet related. How do you go about sort of identifying the underlying cause of the acne and then treating it?
Actually, I'm dealing mostly with chronic adult acne. Because teenagers' acne, it's more dramatic, but easier to manage, because it's most of the cases it's a hyperproduction of the sebum. The skin is hyperactive under the hormonal influence, and it's much more difficult when you are suffering from acne for 20 years for some unknown reasons. And we see a lot of women like this who tried everything and coming desperate to the dermatologist, because 1 week in a month, the last week before the period, it's a breakout once again, and it's tiring, it's irritating, and there are a lot of factors, and obviously that's genetically determined in many cases. But we can help a lot with lifestyle change, and now the role of the diet, finally, it was proven, because it was a lot of fight about it, and a lot of dermatologists said, no, the rubbish diet, forget about it. And a lot of patients who came to us and thought, but when I am drinking milk, they break out. And dermatologists have been obliged to say, that's coincidence. But it is not. And now it's well proven that leucine, it's an amino acid in the red meat and the cow milk. It can make breakouts in some people's skin, not in 100%, but some people are genetically determined to it. And also that's some kind of bad combination, like sugar, red meat, junk food, saturated oil, and the cow milk that can create this environment. But if the skin is well protected, if the skin is healthy, it will fight it by itself.
That's so true.
Yeah, and also the sleep, the stress hormones level.
A lot of it is about balancing everything, isn't it? And it's a difficult one to maintain.
Actually, I love skincare, and I'm a dermatologist, but I'm well aware that skincare cannot resolve the problem itself. So it's like a pyramid, and lifestyle, it is a foundation. Skincare, it is in the middle, not so much higher on the lifestyle. So for me, it is part of lifestyle.
And what about the prescription strength products, things like the Roaccutanes that often, you know, teenagers, adolescents get put on as well to manage acne? What are your thoughts on those?
Now guidelines are slightly changing. Obviously, dermatology, like all area of medicine, they're a little bit conservative, so you don't see prebiotics and probiotics in the official guidelines yet. Hopefully, it would be in the next future.
One day.
But one day, yes. But now, Roacutan, it's not like the first choice treatment, because it was a period when Roacutan was prescribed to everyone suffering from the acne. And before it, there have been antibiotics prescribed for the acne treatment. Now, monotherapy of the antibiotic for the acne, it's not a thing anymore. We don't do it anymore. And in the guidelines, there combined therapy. And Roacutan now is recommended only for the very severe cases of acne, because that's absolutely revolutionary and efficient treatment, but with a lot of side effects.
But you also have to be mindful of the fact that acne left unsolved can then lead to scarring, don't you? So I think that's when sometimes the Accutane obviously then does come in, just to ensure that teenagers, adolescents aren't left with scars that are going to haunt them.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it seems like an easy choice, but recently I read this biography of Matthew McConaughey, Green Light. Funniest book ever. And in the one chapter, he is speaking about his acne experience. And obviously, as a dermatologist, my favorite chapter of all the book. And he is telling, it's actually a funny story, but so typical. First of all, he started to suffer from acne. Handsome boy, like king of the class. And the acne was mild, but his mother, who worked for some multi-level company, prescribed him some skincare treatment, which was awful, apparently, based on the oil. So in a couple of months, he was covered by acne, and it was a severe stage. And some dermatologists prescribed him the Roacutan. And for a few months, he was extremely ugly. Red, constantly exfoliated, unhappy, and speaking about how ugly I am. And it was a difficult moment in his life. And I believe he was handsome.
But
anyway.
I think everyone has had, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself here, but I think everyone has had a moment in time where their skin has erupted. And, you know, even if you're prepared for it, even if you know how to manage it, you know, I was a beauty editor when it happened to me. I had all the specialists at my fingertips, yet, you know, every time I looked in a mirror, I was, you know, barely wanting to leave the house. It can have a crippling effect on someone's self-esteem.
But when I say that, it's like Matthew McConaughey case. He was treated by the Roacutan and treated successfully, but it was so easy to avoid previously. It just something went wrong with this wrong type of the skincare, the lifestyle. He didn't get the right advice at the time, so at some point, Roacutan was the only choice. And I think it happens so often, so people need to be
a bit more open-minded.
Yeah, to speak. Unfortunately, with a dermatologist, it's not always, you are not able to speak properly about your life most of the time. So it's like 5 minutes, okay, you have acne, take Roacutan. It should be different.
And what are the stages of life where you find people sort of coming under pressure most from their skin? Is it the adolescence? Is it pregnancy? Is it menopause? I mean, we go through all these amazing chapters in life, but actually often they are undermined by really bad skin.
I think every period of the life is so different, but what I see in patients, that probably teenager period is the most difficult, because all these, you know, Russian mountains of hormones and high and low emotions, and they are not able to manage that by themselves. So hopefully with age we have a little bit more of experience, and we are learning how to control our emotions a little bit better and to see things differently. But pregnancy, sorry Francesca, it's so difficult period. Oh my God, I remember myself. It was like, yeah. And the most irritating things, it was like everyone around me told, oh, concentrate on your baby. You should be happy. I am not happy.
Not when you're breaking out at the same time.
Yeah, and every breaking out, okay, I am ugly. So it's difficult, and it's very important to help in this period of the life, which is more difficult because you cannot prescribe Roacutan or antibiotics. So topical skincare and safe skincare, that fortunately we have prebiotic skincare now, which works good and it is safe. And menopause period is also difficult because of all these absolutely natural changes, which is difficult to accept. And literally every time when in our life hormone levels are starting to change, it's difficult to accept and difficult to control.
Well, they're completely out of our control in a sense, and I think that's what makes a lot of these physical effects that come about as a result very difficult to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a dermatologist, it's difficult to say I can help with hormonal changes. But once again, now it's possible to go smoothly through this period. And the right skincare, it's a great help because it helps you feel better about yourself.
And I think that's key, anything to do with managing skin is that fine balance of how we feel on the inside, but also how we're sort of presenting on the outside. So it's that inside-out approach, I suppose, that you're striving for.
And it's such a, two-way pathway, because when your skin looks better, it sends some emails and signals to your nervous system, so you feel better inside. It makes your skin look better, and so on. So no matter from what part you're starting, skin or nervous system, it would be beneficial. Just start from somewhere.
I couldn't agree more. It's a very powerful organ. Thank you so much, Tiina. That was really interesting. And I think we're going to move on to Rhian, who is probably going to pick up on a lot of those things that you said as well, gut and sleep and hormones and whatnot. So Rhian introduced herself, but she is a nutritionist, naturopath, and she has a real interest in women's health. So I think really sort of critical to the conversation we're having tonight. But I mean, Rhian, you've been doing this for a number of years, and you've obviously had countless patients come through your door. Have you seen our concerns evolve over the time?
Yes and no. So kind of 10 years ago when I was in clinical practice, most people were coming in just for weight. And although they had a lot of stuff happening, so they still had things with their gut or their skin, they didn't really think that nutrition would help with that. So they were like really focused on weight loss. And no matter how much I tried to talk about, well, maybe we should fix your gut first, because if we fix your gut, then the weight will follow. We didn't have doctors like Tiina now who were kind of saying the same thing. And so it was very challenging to get people to understand that actually it's your nutrition and your supplementation and how you structure your lifestyle is about so much more than weight. It's about your mood, it's about your energy, it's about everything, right?
And sometimes people are looking for that quick fix, particularly when it comes to something like weight loss.
Most of the time people want a quick fix, which I understand. I mean, I've been there too. When I had my first child, I was like, I want to lose weight as fast as possible. But then you have to calm down and be like, okay, well, that's not going to work in the long term. So many people were wanting a quick fix when actually their underlying stuff, it still wouldn't take that long to fix, maybe 3 months. But 3 months when you're already upset about something and really want to change it, seems like a lifetime. So back then, it was very much like that. Now, thankfully, we know how much our nutrition, our supplementation, our lifestyle can affect everything. So now people are coming in being like, yeah, I want to lose weight, but also I'm interested in cycle syncing because my periods are terrible and my skin is bad, and so thankfully
it's one of the silver linings of COVID, I feel like, in a slight way, that I think actually everyone has a much greater awareness of their baseline health, and they're not hopefully just going straight to the I want to lose weight, but more about, I want to sort of get all of the systems of my body under control.
Yeah, I mean, it's partially that, but it's partially the research that has come out in the past 10 years is impossible to ignore. Like the microbiome, it's now been shown to affect everything. It affects our insulin, it affects our mood, it affects our serotonin, our skin. So I mean, it's hard now to say that won't work, right? It's hard now to say, well, you can eat whatever you want and your skin will be fine, because actually we know now, we have the data that says it won't. And so it's a much more exciting time to be talking about nutrition and health, because people are more open to it, because 15 years ago, I felt like I was trying to convince people that nutrition is a thing. And they're like, oh, can I just lose some weight? I was like, yeah.
Probably felt like you were banging your head against a brick
I did.
wall.
I found it very challenging too. And also, it's so negatively motivating to only be focused on weight. And it's very hard to make long-term changes with that because you're always going to be trying to find the number. And actually, what if you get to that 125 pounds, but you still have IBS and you still have anxiety and you still can't sleep? Are you going to be happy? Not particularly. And how common is it for us to stay at one set weight continuously? I mean, we're females, so it's going to fluctuate throughout our whole month with men too, not as much. But I mean, it's not a realistic thing to just focus on one thing. It's impossible.
No, I agree. And in the same way that I said to Tina, you know, once you restore your skin barrier, actually a lot of those positive skin changes naturally occur as side effects. And it's probably the same, you know, as soon as you get your gut sort of at its most optimal, the weight loss and, you know, the general sort of happiness, the energy, it probably does all just come back as a bit of a side effect because you've fixed that underlying issue.
Yeah, and the really nice thing about that is when you focus on nutrition, and you really work on your gut health, your insulin, kind of the whole system, is you get a new idea of how you can actually feel. And then when you stray from that, you then kind of think, actually, I don't want to feel like that. So it moves away from being, I can't have that because my nutritionist said I can't, to I don't want to have that because it makes me feel bad, or I don't want to have that because it makes my eczema flare, or
Exactly.
it gives me wind, or whatever your problem is, right? So
I guess people have just cultivated that sort of awareness of their body a little bit more, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's key, right? Because I can sit here and say, nobody should have this, but if you love that, you'll be like, I'm fine,
I will fight you for the chocolate.
I'm fine, thank you very much. But if you have, when you have an issue that really affects you, like skin is actually one of the easiest things for us to treat because people are so affected by it that they're quite, they really follow the protocols and then they see it change. So skin, gut, those things are quite easy because once you make your changes, then people start to be like, oh, I see a direct cause and effect, therefore I choose not to have this. And then it's not a chore, but when it's weight, we're usually trying to cut things out from being like, I'm not good enough or I don't look good enough. And then the psychology of it is very different. So it's much more challenging.
No, 100%. And where do most of us come sort of unstuck, or where do we fall short when it comes to maintaining healthy nutrition and that sort of healthy, balanced lifestyle that we probably know we ought to be following, but we don't always?
So first of all, I think it's really important to know that it takes a really long time. Like it takes years to get to that point where you know your body, you know what type of fitness works well, you know what type of foods work well. So I mean, we need to be more patient because
And a bit kinder to ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, look, we all want to look as good as we can and feel as good as we can as soon as we can, but the fastest way to get there is slowly, right? So I think that one of them is just our mindset. One of them is knowledge, right? So I mean, we're never taught this at all. And until kind of the last few years, we didn't have doctors who were saying the same thing, being like, well, this is fine, but actually you also need to look at your sleep and your diet and this, right? So you'd go to the doctor, they'd be like, you're fine, or kind of there's nothing we can do, so that when you would go see a nutritionist, it was a lot harder because they were like, well, but my doctor said it's not about my diet. So part of it is knowledge, and then the rest of it is just habit. It's patience and habit and trying things and then seeing how your body feeds back. I think we tend to want to try something on Monday and then it's effective by Tuesday and then we'll stay on that and then we know. But what really happens is we try something, then some things don't work and we have to tweak, or we slip up and we have a cookie or a cake or something and then we're like, it's all over, I'm going to stop. And actually this is a part of it, and it's about learning to be consistent, it's about learning to be more patient, but it's also about understanding that there are some fundamental things that apply to all of us, but the rest is personalized and we need to figure that out. And of course you can get help from a nutritionist or from supplements, but most of that work has to be done by you, by trial and error, right? And
so this isn't about going for a test and having your blood sort of tested for all sorts of intolerances and sensitivities you might have. It's literally just trying things, listening to your body, seeing how it responds.
You can do the testing. The thing with the testing is it's not very accurate. So with food intolerance testing, the accuracy is low. So for example, if my digestion was terrible and my immune system was bad, I could get false positives on 20 foods, and you'd think, what? I can't eat apples or chicken or fish, and
then you fall into those restrictive eating patterns.
Yeah, or you don't do it at all because you're like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is everything I eat, because your body is so inflamed and so activated that it's not a positive, or the positive foods aren't actually an allergy. It's just that your system is totally out of whack. So a much more accurate way to approach it is through trial and error, is by following some sort of an elimination, the diet, short term, right? So, 6 weeks to 3 months max, and then reintroducing things slowly. But also in that time, working on your stress, working on your sleep, keeping track of your symptoms, right? So many people spend so much time doing an elimination diet, but then when they're done, they're like, I'm done. And they'll go out and they'll have like a pizza and fries and mayonnaise and alcohol. They react. They have no idea what was it the fried food? Was it the alcohol? Was it the dairy? Was it the gluten? So you really have to be careful with how you add things back in, but your body will tell you. There's no better test than your body. And it might not be one of the things we think it is. So we all kind of think it's gluten, it's dairy, but it could be an apple. I mean, who knows, right? So we need to be open to that it might not be something that we think, and then you just have to judge how you feel.
And how interesting, because both you and Tiina both sort of said, about 3 months almost to sort of finesse the skin, to figure out what your gut needs, what your body needs. And so it goes to show all these things are never going to be an overnight fix. It is going to take time for us to work on them. But to your point about the sensitivities and the intolerances, are these something that you're seeing more of?
I think we're seeing more people acknowledge it. So I think it's always been there. So I mean, certainly one of the things we've worked on in clinics since I began was like, first you need to work out what foods work, right? That's a fundamental part of being a nutritionist. But now people are more open to being like, okay, I think it's from my food, right? Because so many people think that if you react poorly to a food, you'll have a symptom in your gut. But food intolerances can be headaches, they can be anxiety, they can be poor immunity, they can be cold sores, they can be ulcers. They can be so many more things than just gut, that now that we know that, we're like, oh, okay, let's become more mindful of how our bodies are reacting to certain foods. There's also an element of, yes, of course, we're becoming more sensitive, because the farther we stray away from whole food in its natural form, the harder it will be for our bodies to understand what to do with that, right? So, I mean, the processing of food will affect us. The chemicals we're exposed through food, through the environment, through antibiotics, through medications, they'll affect our gut. So, I mean, it's a variety of factors, but so many people that I see, they're on antibiotics 4 times a year, and nobody talks to them about their gut. Nobody talks to them about...
They're killing it with the antibiotics.
Yeah. And so we go through so many challenges, but nobody kind of says, okay, what are you going to do to recover? Not just, okay, I'm not sick now, so I'll go on. It's like, what are you going to do to actually give your body that time to heal? Because we don't think like that, right? So
Such
actually,
a good point.
Yeah, so if you go on a course of antibiotics, sometimes you have to, that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't, right? Sometimes we just have to, but then what are you going to do afterwards to make sure that you're replenishing your system? And I've seen this a lot with COVID, because it's been so terrible. We're home, we're isolated, then when you get sick, you stay home. So many people I've spoken to, they kind of get to their day 10 and then they go out and they go hard and they have alcohol and they have terrible food, and then they're like, why am I so fatigued?
And they're dying.
You still have systemic inflammation. You need to give your body time to actually heal. So just because you don't have the thing you were trying to treat, it does not mean you're back to full caliber, right? And so that's why I think it's really important to make sure you're scheduling time in your year for you. Whether you want to call that a cleanse or not, it doesn't matter, but it's like, how many times per year do you actually factor in time to restore your health and to recover from all of these things, right?
And conversely, do you ever find that the sort of so-called clean eating and the very restrictive eating patterns can lead to maybe not the intolerances, but certainly the sensitivities, the imbalance in the body? I mean, how do you deal with those as a nutritionist?
Yeah, so I don't see those as much. What I see very often is people who have had a problem for a very long time. They'll go on the internet and they'll be like, right, I'm going to do FODMAP. And FODMAP is a very restrictive diet for SIBO, which is a bacterial problem in your intestines, which should be treated with antibiotics and then herbally afterwards. So FODMAP is not the type of diet that you should stay on for 10 years. It's the type of diet you should stay on to help to minimize your symptoms. The same thing with an elimination diet. These diets aren't supposed to be an ongoing nutrition regime. It's a tool to help you either calm down your system, identify a symptom, or to just kind of keep things at bay whilst you figure out something else. So I think because there's such a lack of support and knowledge that is shared with the people on how to treat things, they often go on the internet,
Google, and start self-prescribing.
And extreme things sound more logical for some reason than just being like, I'm going to eat more diversity. I'm going to eat more fermented foods.
Again, because we're looking for that quick fix. We think, well, if
so
I do
many
something
people
dramatic,
come to me on like FODMAP or no lectin, and I'm like, do you have rheumatoid arthritis? And they're like, no. I'm like, why are you on no lectin? So I mean, there's so many things where you read like lectin cured but it's not for everyone, and it has its place, and they can be incredibly helpful, and some people might not tolerate a lectin, but that's not like the norm. So we just have to be very mindful about where we're getting the knowledge from, and actually, does it apply to us, right?
exactly, and sort of seeking that expert opinion.
Yeah.
And where do you find hormones fitting into the conversation that you have with patients? Because, like Tina and I were discussing, they can be sort of fluctuating at all different times of life and chapters of life, and they obviously have a huge impact, I'm sure, on particularly things like weight loss or weight gain, like you were saying at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, hormones are everything. They govern everything. So gut and hormones, I mean, you can't really pick one that's more important, and they're entirely intertwined. So, but I think where a lot of people don't focus enough of their time on is, of course, insulin and metabolic flexibility. So making sure that our insulin stays in check is one of the most impactful things we can do for all aspects of our health. That will play into our skin, that will play into our gut, but also our gut, if we have an overgrowth of the pathogenic bacteria, that can increase our insulin. So everything is intertwined. What we know now is calories in, calories out. That model is old. It's no longer the accepted thing, right? So it's much more kind of about what's your hormonal environment, what is your gut like, and then calories matter, but more the type of calorie, not the amount, right? So I mean, there was an incredible study done, I think in 2012, and we're still not talking about it, but they looked at the type of calorie that you took in, and they showed that over 54 countries, if you took in 150 calories per day from liquid sugar, so high fructose corn syrup or a soda pop or candy, you were like 28% more likely to have diabetes and more visceral fat, regardless of how many calories that you had.
That makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense, right? So like, you don't have to be overweight to be prone to diabetes. You can be thin and still be very biochemically unhealthy. So I mean, we need to stop thinking about weight in kind of like, well, I'm thin, so I'm healthy, or I'm overweight, so I'm not. It's a variety of things. You can be thin and healthy, you can be thin and unhealthy, you can be heavier, same thing. So I mean, we really need to work on what's our hormone balance, how is our gut, how do we feel, what is our body trying to tell us?
And you mentioned sugar as well, and I think that's really interesting, because obviously you don't want to demonize any particular ingredient as a nutritionist, but it is very well publicized, the detrimental effects of sugar and what that does.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit. I'm completely fine saying that sugar is definitely something we should not be having as a staple, right? So I think we also sometimes get a little bit too sensitive about, like, we can't say foods are bad because then people will think, but actually sugar is bad for us. And one of the reasons we're in the situation we're in is because nobody says that, and we're kind of taught to be like, well, don't worry, you just have whatever you want. But actually, we shouldn't. Like, high fructose corn syrup causes a lot of medical conditions, the same way that the trans fats, which have now been banned in many countries, we used to be like, oh, it's heart healthy, but actually it causes cancer. So there are some things it's okay to demonize, and it's okay to have a hard line saying, I don't eat that because I choose not to, because I want to be healthy. And I think that's okay. Now, when you're afraid of fruit, I think that's when you're like, okay, you're too on the extreme side. So the natural things, you know, fruit, yes, it has natural sugar in it, but it comes with a ton of incredible phytochemicals that are good for your health, and it's okay to have sugar in its natural
But
form.
it's about education then, in which case,
Exactly.
isn't it? And understanding the difference, obviously, between an apple and, yeah.
Exactly, which is why there needs to be some sort of implementation of, like, when do we teach people this? Because we should be teaching them this in school, right? Because otherwise usually what happens is people get to late 20s, early 30s, and something is wrong. So then they research it themselves. But we shouldn't be doing that. Like, our health needs to be taught. Like, how can we create health, not how do we just fight illness? And that's really important.
And final question about supplementation, because you obviously have your own range of ARTAH supplements, which are fabulous, but at what stage do we start to integrate those into lifestyle? You know, is it once we've got sort of on the even keel with everything? Are we using them more as a support network?
So I think it's a bit of both. You're not going to out-supplement a bad nutrition the same way you can't work out to make up for bad nutrition. So I mean, your nutrition is always the fundamental part of your health that you just need to work on, but supplementation is important, and it can help with a huge amount of things. I think it's about making the decision whether you want the minimum or the optimum, right? And we've talked about this, where it's like, okay, so the RDA tells me how much I need to not be deficient and not be ill, but how much do I think I need for my lifestyle, right? And so
Making it very bespoke.
yeah, and someone like me, I mean, I take magnesium because I burn through it like that, and when I don't take it, I don't feel well. And so there are certain things that when you know that, you know, high stress, lots of exercise, lots of coffee, which I won't give up. I'd rather take magnesium than stop coffee, so I'm fine with that. That's my decision.
Coffee to wake up, magnesium to send you to sleep.
That's the one. So there are certain things that you can take to optimize. There are certain supplements that can be just fantastic with helping you get back on track. So I mean, if you're someone who's taken a ton of antibiotics, you could just eat a ton of fermented food and work on it really slowly, or you could fix that and eat your fermented food, but then also take a probiotic to get back into balance. So I think there's a time and a place for lots of different supplements. On the whole, we all for sure need to be taking a D3 right now. Omegas are very important as well. So I think that there are certain ones that are just fundamental that have been shown to, we just don't get enough of. But once you've done that, it's about what do I need right now, right?
Exactly. Responding in the here and now. That makes perfect sense. Thank you, Rhian. Super
Thank you
interesting,
so much.
as I knew it would be. And final speaker, Joanna Ellner, who, as you know, Jo and I worked together many years ago, but more importantly, she's now here at 180 as their amazing acupuncturist, and she has a very purist, very classical approach to acupuncture, which is really fascinating. So I'm going to ask her lots of questions about that. But Jo, what are the most common reasons your patients are coming to see you right now, would you say?
I'd say at the moment, and I see predominantly women here, which is also the gender I prefer to treat, not to be mean to any men, but I'm more fascinated with the female body, and also for an acupuncturist, menstrual health is a really big indicator of our internal balance, and so for me, that's a really key way into understanding where and how your body is disharmonized. And at the moment, I'm seeing menstrual imbalances, but also I'd say it's very tricky to say kind of the certain things I'm seeing, because whenever your body is out of balance, each person will go to a different place. In Chinese medicine, we categorize those broadly as either excess or deficiency, and from there we categorize further and further. So if your body is out of balance and goes to excess, we often see forms of what we call heat, where there is tension further up the body. It might be neck strain, it may be eye visual disturbances, migraines with aura, any pains, any strong acute pains, that's an excess condition. Otherwise, it might be that you go more towards deficiency, which can look like obviously feeling tired, feeling brain fog in the middle of the afternoon. It might even be that you have some palpitations or light fluttering of the heart. That could indicate a heart-chi imbalance or a deficiency. That often presents with sleep issues, and also sleep is a huge subject in and of itself in terms of Chinese medicine. If you have trouble sleeping, I would need to talk to you just about that for about 10 minutes to understand the specificities of that issue and what that relates to. So the particular time you might wake up if it's wakeful sleep, or what happens when you can't fall asleep. Is your mind whirring with thoughts that you cannot put down? Are you sweating at night? Is there... are you very, very light sleeper, like you would hear a pin drop? All of those things point to a different organ system which may be out of balance in terms of its qi, yin or yang. So hard to quantify this into like bite-sized parts.
It's so nuanced. It's fascinating hearing you describe it, because you almost have to be a bit of an investigator and really deep dive into that patient on your treatment table.
I'd say maybe one of the only ways I can relate it to being a journalist. You are literally investigating, and it is a form of triangulation almost, because you are plotting points on a chart, and only after speaking to that person for preferably around 30 minutes, you start to see this picture come into view of what actually is happening. We tend to each have at least 2 or 3 patterns which are all overlapping. One of those patterns tends to come from like a constitutional weakness, like just something that you're particularly kind of prone to. I was speaking earlier with somebody about my husband who just anything gastro-related, he's just out, like he's done. And he's always had that kind of constitutional weakness, as we would call it. It sounds quite grand. So that's something to take into account. But yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a broad range. What I'm also seeing, which I want to bring up, is that I think, as you said at the start, Francesca, we are in recovery mode, mentally, physically. The ways that we are approaching that recovery, I think we're grabbing onto the things that feel familiar. We have been rudderless for so long, so we're trying to anchor ourselves. I'm seeing huge amounts of burnout, overwork, feeling of overwhelm everywhere. And so that's kind of like the spark that causes the body to go into those states of imbalance and disharmony. And I even would relate it to the fact that, I noticed this earlier, when we go on holiday or take rest, we're almost apologetic about it. I saw a friend who was on holiday and, she said, oh, first holiday since 2019. It was almost, I was like, you don't have to excuse it.
People feel they have to justify taking time for themselves.
It's vital that we schedule rest. And our culture, our society is not that way inclined. It's like, as Rhian said, we need to get ahead of these imbalances before they go down the progression. There is like a very famous old Taoist saying, which I won't do complete justice, but it's essentially, it's foolish to dig the well when you're already thirsty. So once you get those initial signs that your body isn't out of balance, that is your body really begging you to kind of take a moment, sit back and rest and quantify. I think because we have been in such a period of unpredictable, chronic existential stress with everything that's happened in the past couple of years, we're looking to those familiar things, overworking and just grinding.
I couldn't agree more. And it sounds like then it's a combination. So I was going to say to you, where do all these concerns, what's their root cause, what's their origin? But it sounds like it's a bit of everything. It's our own natural underlying weaknesses. It's also the state of the world we're living in. It's that sort of, meeting of those two minds, so to speak.
I would say as well, for women especially, there are certain... As a TCM practitioner, we treat the Zhang Fu, which are the organs within the body, which each have a different role than they do in biomedicine. So if I talk about your heart chi or your heart yin, doesn't mean you're about to have a heart attack. And it's not. we cannot translate it in that way. They each have a completely different role. But I would say imbalances of the heart and imbalances of the liver, the heart being more around the deficiency, the liver is more prone to excess.
I always get liver whenever I get, there's always a really painful point between my toes, and I go, ow,
that's
and he
liver
goes,
3.
it's your liver.
One of my favourites. Liver chi stagnation, I would say, is probably one of the most common patterns that affects probably 90% of people in this country, man, woman, whatever. And that is essentially, there are many facets to it, and it's kind of has a period of progression. But one of the key facets is like our emotional health. The liver chi becomes stagnated when there isn't a safe and effective release of pent-up emotion. Over time, and this could be over years, if you do not have access to ways to safely express your emotions, and particularly emotions of frustration, anger, and resentment, it ends up stagnating the liver chi. That in turn then starts to have possibly some menstrual symptoms. So we see with liver chi stagnation, strong PMS, breast tenderness before the period, there might be cramping, there might be darker blood, clotting. All of those things show up very clearly as liver chi stagnation. And then you may have like eye issues, like very sensitive eyes, red eyes. The list goes on.
But it's so interesting because it's such a common link to when we say, you know, an overbuild, sort of a building up of stress eventually does, you know, it's an emotional manifestation, but it does eventually come out in the body in a physical way, and it leads to disease and it leads to degeneration. And it feels like actually a lot of these emotional things we need to stay on top of, because otherwise they are going to lead to physical imbalance. And
each organ has one emotion that it's kind of associated with. So when I inquire, and a diagnosis, there's kind of 4 main ways that I would diagnose, or they call this Zhejian. My Chinese accent is terrible. So it's like looking, listening, touching, and inquiry. So you go through all of these, and they're very in-depth, but I always inquire about that person's emotional state, and, you know, certain things come up, certain things don't. Some people are forthcoming, some people aren't, and I take all of that on board.
You have to paint that picture.
Yeah, and with the liver, it's anger, frustration. So I always kind of check with that. But with the heart, it's joy or lack of joy. So lack of joy can read as sadness. Tearfulness before a period, for instance, is like a dead giveaway that I might need to be treating the heart channel. And with the kidneys, because I'm seeing a lot of low back pain, which generally is around your kidney yin or kidney yang. And I'm sorry, Francesca, but when you're pregnant, your baby takes all of your kidney yin, which is why you might get some low back pain later on. And Rhian, I don't know if this affected you, but I sat most of my pregnancy with a deep heat patch on my lower back. So that emotion is sadness. Fear for the kidney. And for the spleen, and the spleen doesn't really have a role in Western biomedicine. We don't talk about the spleen much, but in Chinese medicine, it's hugely influential. It's worry. So I was treating a patient the other day, and, you know, it really chimed with her when I said, because she has very wakeful sleep, and when she wakes up, it's literally a to-do list that just does not go. And then that also had kind of other aspects to it around her digestive health. We often see that presenting with loose stools. Sorry to bring the tone down. It's an investigative process. But yeah, everybody is completely different.
And I love this sort of silent language that you have for sort of reading your patient as well, because obviously this is only just the beginning, you know, your investigations before you pull out your needles and sort of get somebody on the table. I mean, what are the little signals and the cues that you're learning to pick up on as an acupuncturist?
I think we're all reading each other without knowing it, subconsciously through life. It's biology. We don't know we're doing it. We're picking up on those subtle cues. It's a huge breadth of information that I'm kind of storing away before somebody's even opened their mouth. You know, I'm looking at primarily, I mean, partly kind of body shape, but more about their gait, their posture, the way they walk. And in terms of their spirit, we talk about the Shen being like the spiritual center of our emotions in Chinese medicine. And I can read the Shen by engaging with somebody in terms of eye contact. If somebody isn't able to sustain the eye contact, or there's kind of almost like a darkness, that not like physical, but there just seems to be like a shut-offness. That tells me something about that person's shen, and that's something that I can build into the treatment. That takes a while, because actually somebody's shen, when it's low like that, it can also indicate what that person may have been through in their life.
And it probably changes every time, you know, because you obviously work with patients on a course of treatment, so every time they come in, it's probably slightly different.
The best reward I can get is to see that person's shen lift through the treatment. I was treating a woman with menopause a couple of years ago, and when I first spoke to her, I mean, she was a single mum with 2 kids. She was struggling immensely with emotional, like, you know, imbalances, but also just all of the symptoms that go along with menopause. And I felt kind of, you know, I really hope I can help this woman. I hope it's going to, you know, it's an energetic thing. There's no absolutes with acupuncture. You don't know how long it will take. It, you know, it depends how on board that person is with the process. And literally, I think it was like the 5th or 6th treatment, she was like a complete new woman. She came in with her daughters, and it was just like, yeah, I mean, that's the best thing, being able to see that. But again, as the ladies have said, it is a process. We have to be patient with it. And even with acupuncture, lifestyle is a huge thing we talk about. So I'm sure that there is like a Venn diagram with what I'm saying and Rhian is saying. There's some kind of middle bit where we say the same thing. But also Chinese medicine has a huge kind of like diet kind of aspect to it, and that is, you know, tailored towards what that person's imbalance is or what that pattern is. But yeah.
And in these times of flux, and when we are feeling sort of quite unstable and sort of unrooted, you used rudderless earlier, which I love as a word. Are there any sort of key systems or organs that you're sort of specifically trying to strengthen that can help somebody regain that sort of strength of constitution?
I mean, yes, all of them. But it's hard because I can't say a generalized thing because it will be different for each person. I think that we all each know where we go to when we're out of balance, where our
almost
mind
like Rhian
goes.
said as well, sort of the that would be the underlying weaknesses, you know.
Yeah, there may be a constitutional weakness. Or it might be that, you know what, when I'm feeling like I've taken too much on, I get tearful or I get really shouty and I take it out on that person, whatever. When you feel that that's happening, you know, go see your local acupuncturist. But also, take time out. I mean, for the liver, for instance, the liver loves movement. So if anger and frustration and resentment is something that happens to you, even if it is not around the menstrual cycle, movement's really important. You need to stretch it out. And it doesn't even need to be kind of like high intensity. It just needs to be consistent. And, you know, again, having that outlet to express those feelings. With kidney, like low back pain, knee issues, any hearing impairment, that would be like a kidney yang deficiency. And with that, nourishment and warmth, and actually diet's really key there. I think that we have, and forgive me if this goes against anything you're saying, Rhian, we have become a culture of, through no fault of our own, and, you know, believe me, I lived on Pret sandwiches for at least 10 years as a journalist, convenience for our foods.
Of course.
We so rarely have warm foods. Any acupuncturist you talk to will, you know, till they're blue in the face, talk about the temperature of foods, warmth. Our digestion really needs warmth. It has to work so much harder to digest, you know, salads and sushis, which are fine
into a
here
shock,
and there.
doesn't it, if it's just cold food the whole time?
Yes, and if you already have kidney yang shu or kidney yang deficiency is essentially like a coldness, like you're prone to coldness. You might also feel the cold more than the next person. So the last thing you want to be doing is introducing more cold to your body.
That's so true. And where does skin fit in as well? So you mentioned that sort of earlier when you were sort of first speaking. And is that something that is a common concern for people that come to see you? Do you just naturally see it sort of manifesting when a patient comes to see you?
I definitely use it as part of my diagnostic process. The great thing about Chinese medicine is every single thing on your body is a sign of something. There is nothing that doesn't give me diagnostic information. It's just what comes first and second and what's the most important and how you kind of like order it. You know, Chinese face reading is a fascinating kind of rabbit hole that I keep going down.
What is Chinese face reading?
Well, it's an ancient art of looking at the face and plotting like a chart, like a painting by numbers chart almost. Oh, if you have like, you know, a blemish here that's, you know, not a blemish, but kind of like a landmark, that will relate to a certain age in your life. And it might be that something happened at that age and it leaves a mark on your skin.
So it's like the journey or the passage of your life sort of marked out on your face. Wow.
And it sounds, okay, sure. But when you actually do it, you're like, oh yeah, that is true.
You need to do this for me after our talk, please.
Yeah. Well, there's some bits that I've picked up on that, but again, that would probably be a whole nother degree, and I'm by no means an expert in that. But there's certain other things I look for. The Shen, so that, you know, connection with the eyes. The quality of someone's skin tells me a lot. So if it looks, and generally I get this more from feeling. So once I get them on the bed and we start to look at points, feeling the tensile quality of the skin. Whether it feels like I put my finger on someone's leg, and if I can sort of almost feel that there's liquid there, even if it's not like real, like edema, it tells me that there's potentially a spleen and kidney imbalance, which are the organs that help kind of fuel out that water. If it's particularly dry, and often the heels of the feet, if they're really, really dry, I think there's possibly some internal heat, maybe a kidney insufficiency. I don't think this is making much sense, but yes,
no,
I take in all of that, and actually even on the face, you know, there are certain things about facial features that tell me a lot of diagnostic information. Really strong kind of fluffy eyebrows might be a sign of a great wood element, which is like...
What's wood element?
So there are 5 elements, and each person has, you know, one element that they are kind of is more dominant for them, let's say. So like a wood element is somebody, I like wood element people because they're really fun, and they, I think you're probably a wood element person.
Oh, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me today.
Because also they're like trees, so they just keep going, and they're really hardworking, and they just keep fixed on their goals. They're very, very determined, and also they're quite strong. They're not kind of like, you know, meek and mild.
So when you meet people, you can tell whether they are, I'm assuming it's wood, earth, fire.
I get an idea. Another thing that helps me massively, and I don't know if it's the same for other practitioners, is the voice, like the timbre of the voice. Wood people tend to have kind of a strong voice, but it almost has like a tiny rasp to it, almost like a, you know,
like a woodwind instrument.
Just, yeah, like not gravelly, but there's just like a texture to it. Whereas like an earth person, it's like they're singing a song. It's just like... So you kind of hear those things, and then you kind of pair it with everything else you know, and then you come to a conclusion. But as for the face, there are other elements. So like, I look for the strength of someone's jing as well. Sorry, I'm introducing
what
so many
is
different
jing?
things.
No, this is fascinating.
So we all kind of have an idea of what qi is. That's like your battery, your general energy flow. This is what we need to kind of like restore every day with good rest and good food and diet. Jing is, it's almost like the battery pack. So this is like something you're born with. It's your longevity. It's literally like the strength of your core of who you are. It cannot really be... You can't really change it because most of it comes from your parents.
Does it deplete over time?
It does. It depletes over time naturally, but the way you live can make it deplete faster. Right. So yeah, it comes from when the moment of your conception, so the level of your parents' jing at that moment. So obviously it depletes as... And also, you know, in utero, like the woman's jing, and also the moment of your birth, like all of those things influence the level of your jing. You can restore some of it, but mainly it's given at birth. And the way that I can tell the strength of someone's jing, and we say like, because it's to do with longevity, a person who would live to 100, even if they like smoke and drank every day, we hear these stories, it happens, they just had really good jing. the ways that you can kind of tell, like an instant giveaway for good jing, ears, really good, strong cartilage.
Everyone's feeling their ears now.
Your ears are great, Rhian. I think like in China, like grandparents will pull at the ears of their grandchildren and say, yes, you've got good jing.
It's very important actually, sort of ear massage in Chinese culture anyway, isn't it?
The ears are very important to us, yeah. Also the ear is like a microcosm of the body. So I'm sure you've all heard of like ear acupuncture. So sometimes we just bypass the body entirely for speed and just add some needles to the ears. We can
Is
also
that something that you do, the ear acupuncture?
Yes, yeah. I tend to do it on people who are a little bit more experienced with acupuncture because it can be a bit of a zing.
And sometimes you leave the needles in, or is that a slightly different practice? I mean, sometimes you see people with like the little seeds in their ear.
Ear seeds. So that's the same principle as ear acupuncture, except they don't penetrate the skin. It's like a small nickel or gold ball, like tiny, that's fixed to like some surgical tape. And you stick it to the point on the ear that you want to, stimulate. And then over time, so it's really good. There's a point called Shenmen, which is really good for calming the spirit and helping sleep. So if somebody has sleep problems, I'll often send them away with an ear seed in this point here. And then you can kind of press it intermittently, and it's giving you kind of like an acupressure effect. But also jing, a widow's peak for women is a sign of really good jing and good kind of yin creative energy. Yeah, widow's peak. And yeah, philtrum, good philtrum is a sign of good jing.
I'm going to be looking at everyone's philtrum very closely after this conversation.
But also I even look at like somebody's hair, like that tells me a lot too, because that shows like the strength of someone's blood, strength of their yin, their kidney yin. So as I said, like it's bizarre because every single thing has a meaning.
It's such a fascinating practice what you do. I could listen to it for hours. Final question though, what are the other sort of, I suppose, complementary practices that influence what you do? And do you find yourself sort of giving that advice to people on the table when they're there for a treatment?
So I studied traditional Chinese medicine at Westminster University. It was a degree, so there was lots of therapeutic relationship stuff, which I know isn't in every course, but I really, really valued that because I think that it's one thing knowing how to do acupuncture, but it's another thing knowing how to share space with somebody in kind of like a caring, intimate and safe way.
That's so true.
And we I don't know if anyone's come across the concept of unconditional positive regard, something that is used in nursing and doctors use it. It's basically, there is no judgment. I do not give unsolicited advice unless I'm asked for it. And I don't think this is true of like all acupuncturists, particularly those who are, more traditional. They'll just come and say, don't do this, do this. I'm just really careful not to do that because I think the last thing we need is more things to be told to do and not do. If somebody's looking for that information, I'm more than happy to share with them what I know. And often that will be to take more time for yourself, to move a little more. I'm not specific about how long or how, or find a friend and take a walk with them this weekend. Let some of this out. I think that saying something is good and making someone feel cared for and safe is vital, but I just would never, I'm really anti that stuff.
No, I think that's important, and also it's important to sort of recognise your discipline and where your skills lie, and I think also refer to other people if there is something that concerns you with a patient. I'm sure you have a wealth of practitioners, particularly being in a place like this, who you can then sort of pass them on to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lady that I'm treating, and I know that she would benefit from having a herbal medicine approach as well as acupuncture. So I definitely refer, and I think that other complementary practices can really work together, but we just have to ensure, the tricky thing is we're all going to say different things, so it's like you kind of have to do what feels right and the thing that you connect to the most, and also just give it some time. I always say at the beginning of like a treatment or when I see a new patient, this is a cumulative practice. It's like going to the gym. Don't expect results immediately. Like to hope that you get something from this treatment, but we need to be patient, but also prioritize ourselves and know that it's just as important as your business meetings and, you know, all of these other things.
I love that concept of scheduling rest. That's definitely something I'm going to do. More power naps for me in the middle of the afternoon.
I schedule a Saturday bath and I put it in my husband's diary, and he's not to disturb me.
The door will be locked. The bathroom you are not to enter. I love that. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting stuff. I'm sure everyone agrees. Well, that very much brings us to the end of our panel conversation. I think we can all agree these amazing practitioners have been super interesting. I think what struck me from, you know, sort of asking the questions up here, I don't know what you feel sort of having listened, but it's really interesting how each of your approaches really sort of supports and correlates with what one another have said. And also what strikes me is how nuanced like the worlds that you operate in are. You know, there's not a simple quick fix and overnight sort of solution to anything that we've been speaking about, but obviously there's a lot of power with getting our skin under control, managing our hormones, our sleep, our nutrition. So really powerful places to start. Thank you. We do have time for a few audience questions if there are any. If you do need to run away, please make sure you pick up a goodie bag. We're going to have hopefully somebody handed them out by the door. And yeah, if there are any questions, just pop your hand up and we will come around you. There's a microphone, but you can also just shout really loudly if you want. Hi there.
Hi, start again. So Joanna, I was just fascinated to hear all that you had to share. And I wondered, even for people who don't necessarily have an imbalance or something that they wish to treat, can we just come and see you and then you can investigate?
That's exactly when you should. Acupuncture works best as prevention. Yes, it can help you once you're unwell, but this is how I think it works really well in tandem with Western biomedicine, which is far more fixated on kind of treatment and when things go wrong. Acupuncture, you know, from its inception nearly 4,000 years ago, is always there to keep people well. And in fact, your local acupuncturist in the village would not be paid if you became unwell. So that's literally the concept of it. So yeah, we can always help, you know, keep you feeling strong, keep you feeling, you know, full of energy in life. That's how it was intended, for sure.
Thank you.
Do you want that?
Were there any other questions? I have a question for, sorry.
I just want to ask you, Rhian, so there's this new law that's out on hi. I just wanted to ask you, Rhian, obviously there's this new law about having calories now on menus. So I just wondered, I've heard a lot of different points of view. I just wondered what you, in your profession, what your opinion on that was.
To be honest, I found it incredibly frustrating because calories, we're not taught anything about what calories mean or what the quality of calorie does to your health. So just to put a kind of a total sum on a menu kind of reinforces an idea that we already know is outdated, which is calories in, calories out, right? So you can, like I said, have 150 calories something and it's pure high fructose corn syrup, and that will be far more detrimental to your health than having a fillet of salmon, which will be 365 calories. So I'm frustrated by it. There are, of course, some things you can take away. So, I mean, if you are somebody who's trying to kind of get your gut under control and your digestion and weight, and you're going out and seeing that actually, regardless of what I'm eating in total on Saturday night, I had 3,000 calories, and actually I have 3,000 calories many times a week. That can, of course, be helpful to steer you, but try not to get too caught up in it because, again, not all calories are equal. You can have far more calories in your diet if they're high quality than if you have fewer calories that are low quality. So, again, it's really the quality that matters. So hopefully that's helpful. I mean, it's far easier to create health than it is to treat illness. And so I think that really focusing on the quality of your foods and trying to teach yourself a little bit about what those calories mean will be very helpful. But just to look at the menu and do a sum isn't really going to be the answer.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 150 calories of high fructose corn syrup is very different than 150 calories of fiber, right? One will actually give health, help the bacteria in your gut, be good for it's very upsetting that this is the route that they've kind of done first, because again, we've proven calories in, calories out does not work, and that's not what it's about. So unfortunately, that's where they began, but hopefully this will then cause enough people saying, what does this mean, for them to then take the next step, which is, okay, maybe we should educate people about what calories actually are and how to interpret them, right?
Hi, I'm quite new to something called cycle syncing, and I've been learning more about that and the idea that your body needs something at kind of the 4 different stages of your cycle. We've been talking about equilibrium and kind of like the different ways in which we can kind of get to that and approach that, but it feels kind of intimidating thinking about achieving equilibrium in 4 different parts of what my cycle and my body needs. So any advice on how to figure that out?
Well, I'll start just because I'm holding the microphone, but then, so I think the good news is that kind of whatever you do in the fields of health and nutrition will take you closer to cycle syncing, right? So if you cut out high fructose corn syrup, that will help you in every phase of your cycle. So I think try not to get too overwhelmed. The first thing you can do is just track your cycle for 3 months, right? Track your food, track your mood, track your exercise, track your symptoms, and then maybe just start with one thing, right? Because again, like you said, to think about 4 different ways to eat and move and behave and think all at once can be very hard. But I think the first place that you can start that's quite easy is the kind of last week before you menstruate. This is when we're most sensitive. This is when we have the lowest amount of serotonin. This is when we're more inflammatory. So that week kind of right before you come onto your period will be when you can probably feel the most amount of change if you start to knuckle down on nutrition and self-care. So if you could probably start one place, I'd advise maybe looking at that. Once you kind of start to get a hold of that, then you can start to look at, okay, well, what does week 1 look like? Well, what is week 2? Because a lot of the stuff that you do in week 4 will then tell you how week 1 will go and how you feel once that happens. So
no, I would agree with that exactly. That first you need to understand your menstrual health, where your balance is at. So are you somebody that gets like premenstrual symptoms? Are you someone who like feels really flat and low after the bleed? All of those things will dictate, from my perspective, from a Chinese medicine perspective, how to sync that cycle. I always recommend that pre-period we engage in more yin activities, like things that engage the hands but quiet the mind. So like cooking, journaling, gardening, those things, and best done alone as well, because we, whenever we do an activity, we often share it with someone else, and this is about ring fencing your energy. But again, it's bespoke to the individual. I've heard of like cycle seeding as well. There's like certain seeds to eat. I mean, for me, there's a lot of things we feel like we should be doing. Figure out where you feel the most out of balance, and then kind of address that bit. And just don't feel overwhelmed.
just maybe one more thing from me. So again, if we're looking for kind of simple things that will help fast, is anything that is inflammatory will make the second half of your cycle worse. So think about sugar, think about alcohol, think about all those things that we kind of associate with that heat. So even the simple changes that are effective for everyone, so more fiber, more vegetables, more good quality fats, those are kind of easy and those are healthy for everybody, and that will help to sync your cycle. So one of the things that I think so many women tell me is the most impactful thing for them is just no alcohol week 4. Now that doesn't mean you can't, but if you are somebody who is is very anxious and swollen and sore right before your period, the worst thing we can do is have alcohol, because it will make it worse. It'll make our mood worse. Our serotonin is already on the floor. Our bowel is slower, right? So things like that. So many people say, don't have alcohol, but I mean, it's unrealistic. So why don't you just start with no alcohol week 4? And things like that where you just actually knuckle down on self-care will really start to help you, I think. Do you want to?
Few practical advices from a dermatologist. From the point of view of the dermatologist, the skin is constantly under the influence of hormones. And what is interesting about our menstrual cycle, the first phase of cycle is quite stable to every one of us. It's like 12, 14 days. And the difference in the cycle is mostly coming from the second phase. So some people are lucky to have stable, not very long cycle, like 26, 28 days. And you're fine, but longer cycle, it's not so beneficial. It's healthy, it's normal. Just the skin, you have higher risk of different kind of skin development in the second phase because you are just longer living under the influence of these hormones. So with a longer cycle, you are prone to the water retention, to the puffiness, and to the slight change of the mood and to the inflammation, because it's kind of inflammatory hormones. So for everyone who has a cycle longer than 28 days, I am recommending to use at least 7-10 days a month calming skincare products or anti-inflammatory skincare product. The great choice are skincare products based on the Centella asiatica. It's the best choice. It's anti-inflammatory, and in the same time, it's strengthening the capillary, so prevents the puffiness, and the good quality of Centella asiatica, the best one is from Madagascar, and the good quality of Centella asiatica, it really helps at this period. So just use like last 10 days some Centella or go to cola-based product. Yep, read the labels. Yeah, so it's, that's Centella asiatica in the, I will tell, in the first 8 position on the label. It would be great. As well as a green tea and some other plant extract. And also another thing, what is very interesting, just another 2 conditions, sorry to be so chatty about it, enlargement pores. Very interesting skin condition, can speak about it for hours. But the one thing that's enlargement pores are linked very much to the ovulation period. So literally in the middle of the cycle, from the 12th, 14th day of the cycles until 16, 17 days, it's really a good solution to use some sebum regulating product. Not pore reducing, because many of them are based on the kaolin and they are just drying off the skin, but something which makes your sebum glands work less, to calm down just a little bit. And it can be some products with retinol or derivatives with salicylic acid, with avocutine, another alternative to retinol. There's a lot of them on the market, like 5 days a month. When you have this enlargement pores, it works like a miracle. And with a dry skin, it's the first phase of the cycle when you need more of moisturizers. And in the second phase of the cycle, you will be okay, especially if you sleep well. But in the first phase of the cycle, just go for hyaluronic acid-based products. And it's extremely helpful. Our body, they're working by biological clocks. It's absolutely magical because everything, we have these internal clocks in the brain, suprachiasmatic. And we have this daily clock, week clock, monthly clock, seasonal clock. If you go to the memory on Facebook, you will discover that exactly in the same day of the last year, you did the same thing. Because that's a biological clock, which makes us feel a little bit the same in different period of the year.
I think I was probably doing a shameless plug of one of my supplements, just saying I find it fascinating that you say centella, because that's in our skin supplement, and so is hyaluronic acid. So hopefully that wasn't too many things. You're kind of like, what's one thing we can start with? And, you know, I say 10 things, you say 10 things. But yeah, just start with the tracking, pick one thing, and then focus on the second phase from there, I think. Yeah, sorry.
If not, then it's just left for me to say a big thank you to our incredible panelists for all of their amazing insights and wisdom, and yeah, just for educating us beyond belief tonight. So thank you, ladies.
Would it be okay if I said one thing about the goodie bag?
Huh?
Would it be okay if I just said one thing about
Oh, yes,
it?
please. So we have a goodie bag for you, but I think tell us about what's in there from ARTAH.
Yeah, so it is a flyer, but the QR code will give you a complimentary download of our 28-day reset, which is our best-selling nutrition plan. It's a modified food elimination. It also comes with 120 recipes, so that is a really good place for you to start if you're looking at doing something like that, and it will also give you a discount of 15% off your first order. So I just in case you thought it was a flyer, it's not just a flyer. So
do not throw the flyer away.
Don't throw it out. Scan it. Use it.
We've got some other lovely bits in there from Augustina Spada and Mauli and Anatomy. So yeah, definitely don't leave that behind. And thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. I hope it was really useful and helpful and beneficial. And it was wonderful to see you all here. So thank you for joining us. And come back to our next event. It will be in May. We'll release details on it very shortly. Thank you.